may not succeed. But in terms of professional misconduct, that is professional misconduct. So if you want to cleanse the judiciary, it's either you go by way of taking them to the NJC first or prosecuting them under criminal laws. There are two different things altogether. They do not clash at all.
Okay, let's go to Abuja very quickly. Ajuri has a question for you. Ajuri, go ahead.
Barrister Keyamo, one of the realities all of us are very aware of as Nigerians is that our institutions are weak. We have people that are very powerful and institutions that are very weak. And whenever the equation is balanced in that manner, or should I say inequality is balanced in that way or unbalanced in that way, it becomes very difficult. Now, you've mentioned the raids on the judges' homes, you know, from months back. And the question I have for you is, when you look at the various institutions we have, the various branches, whether it's the judiciary, whether it's the legislature, whether it's the executive, we've seen a running trend, and it predates this administration, going back to the beginning of civilian rule in '99, is where you have people that protect themselves. Now, even as I don't attribute any guilt to, for example, Senate President Bukola Saraki, there's no doubt about the fact that when he went to the CCT, he carried about 60 senators with him. So when we had the judges' raids, we had the NJC come out very, very strongly and say, look, you know, this is wrong, this is, you know, and all of that. But then we later found out that there was a letter from the EFCC to the NJC saying we need more information concerning these judges because this is what we see. My recollection of that situation was that they had tangible records of wire transfers before they ever entered the judges' homes. But when they saw the inaction within the NJC, they now raided the homes. So my question to you is, if we see a trend where institutions protect themselves, whether it's the legislature, the executive, maybe perhaps in the case of the SGF, for at least for some time, and the judiciary in the cases of the judges, what is the solution?
Well, I agree with you that you cannot circumscribe the powers of the prosecutorial agencies to prosecute. So your question actually supports my position regarding the judgment of the Court of Appeal, because what you're asking is that once the NJC refuses to act or they shield their own, what is the solution? The solution simply is that the agencies, if they have enough evidence to prosecute, can go ahead and prosecute. It is not right to say you must wait for the decision of the NJC. In fact, the NJC itself cannot even dismiss a judge. They can only recommend. So the NJC is not a decision-making body. They recommend to the president to remove or to discipline, to remove a judge or to retire a judge compulsorily. They have to still recommend to the president. So how can you now make the decision to prosecute of the agencies subject to the discretion of a body that cannot still take a decision? It is not right. I do not agree. With all respect, I do not agree with that decision. I do not agree with it.
Okay. In this case, I will take you back again to the question I asked earlier about the role of the NJC and why was the NJC set up. Is it effective, especially in the face of, because there are those who believe that we can't really say we have justice until the judiciary is set and on the right path to ensure that justice is seen to be done. Now, if the body that's supposed to regulate, somewhat monitor and regulate the judiciary, is not exactly empowered, that's what seems to be coming out by the Constitution, how can that be?
Well, it's the issue of checks and balances, you know, that is what they call the checks and balances between arms of government, because you can see that also you still have to go to the president to even appoint judges too. And so you must go back to the president to also remove the judges from office. Now, whether it is right or wrong is another argument altogether. And that has been the argument over the years, that you must insulate the judiciary entirely from executive control. So it is one of the arguments, you know, for the independence of the judiciary, what you're asking. It's one of the issues that we have raised over the years, that you cannot make these appointments and removals and all of that, discipline also subject to the final approval of the executive, the president. So it's a problem. So I agree with you that to that extent, we may need to also tinker with our constitution. But then the overall point we are making is that the judges are not different from any other person, any other citizen in the country. If they are found to have committed crimes, they can be investigated, albeit quietly, because at times the problem is dragging them through the mud in the eyes of the public, and then they lose their credibility, and they can no longer command that respect and authority.
And it's not good for the system.
And it's not good for the system.
Okay, we'll go on a short break, and we'll be back in just a moment. Join us again.